I realized when I was looking through my stuff that I don't have any prog swag. Like the only thing I ever had was I went and saw Tull on Crest of a Knave, and I bought that shirt that Steve Harris wore because I thought that was okay. I don't have that anymore.
I don't know. Would anybody really consider Jethro Tull prog at that point, though?
That was a really good show. I mean,
I
that
mean,
was
they won
before the
Best Heavy
whole.
Metal Artist for God's sake at that
Yeah,
point,
that was
right?
before all that. It was before all that. The thing with Tull is, and we'll get into it, but I just wish Ian Anderson had never heard Mark Knopfler because it just ruined everything. It became so money for nothing. We're gonna do that.
Yeah, kind of did, didn't it?
Mm. So first of all, let me show you our background, which I will put on the screen largely. I found the Roll the Bones performance with the Roll the Bones in tight
Oh my
trousers.
God.
So
That must have been quite a sight to see.
I saw that tour.
You
They
did?
they went, yeah, Mr. Big opened for them, right?
Oh my God, they
And yeah, that should have been my warning. And they were doing like medleys, and it was just like this is with the era they were like, okay, we're gonna do medley. We're gonna do, and they would do like a few bars of like La Villa Strangiato, a few bars of 2112, but I was like, fuck off. This is terrible. Oh,
just play 2112. That's all we want to
that's
hear.
it for the whole first side. I mean, it was a dark time, but at least I got to see them. So anyways, before we get started, I think we should try to discuss or try to uncover what was the cause of it all going down. Like
The
what
cause of
made it
the
go
prog
from
going down?
what made it go from the height of La Villa Strangiato to the depths of, what we're going to talk about now. I mean,
And you know what?
Well,
I'll tell you, Mark like has been starting to let me review stuff and write my own stuff. So I do a lot of like black metal, death metal. I listen to that all day. He sent me this playlist. I was like, oh, I can't anymore. I can't. I can't do it.
I called it going down the torture chamber
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
because I had forgotten just how bad some of these things
Well, see,
really
yeah,
were.
and it also
It's like you delete them out of your memory. They're so.
was it. And this sort of thing usually happens from a good album. Usually starts it. Was it because Moving Pictures was like a number one album? Is that what started it all with the shorter hair and the Don Johnson jackets? Is that
Good question. I mean, even moving pictures at that point was starting to go more into the new wave kind
right?
of shorter
Well, they were
song.
the first ones to do that, though. So I mean, all the gnomes and long hair and all kind of started to go way
I,
after that. So that might have been one of the triggers,
I
or
just listened to
901.
that the other day, and it's such a great album, though. It
Mm-hmm.
had that perfect balance between the 70s prog stuff and the 80s
Yeah,
early kind of post punk, but not
yeah,
yet. Rush was its own thing.
yeah. They got
Still,
it right, and then
it's
everybody
still its
else
own
wanted to
thing,
try to
but
do it. And I was
uh,
looking it up. I was looking it up the other day. 901, 90125 with Yes. Owner
correct.
of a Lonely Heart was the number one song at one point. I mean, it
It
wasn't
was the
just
one
top
song.
100. It was like the number one song. And that song's got a fucking bass solo in it.
That
Maybe
was
that
kind
was
of
the
an
cause.
anomaly too. That's actually a good album. I
It's
mean,
really good.
a
Yeah, I
lot of
love it.
proggers, prog snobs hate
Don't like it. Yeah.
80s. Yes, I'm like, I liked drama. I like, if it's good, it's good, right? I don't care
Mhm.
if it's new wave or it's whatever. It's just that after 90125, they started going way south.
Yeah.
Like Big Generator had a few songs on it that were okay, and then most of them were just like suck.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of started sucking from there on.
Right. And if you think about it, all right, so we're talking about the 90s. So we're talking about, this is like we were saying, this is right before the whole kind of revival thing. This is before like the Steven Wilsons and the Mike Ackerfelts of the world. Um, but besides destroying them at their own game, then went back and started reissuing these classics and saying, no, 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 you need to listen to Yes, you need to listen to what made Opeth, what made Porcupine Tree, But this is before that. This is when they're in the
I
fucking toilet.
love
They're
Porcupine Tree.
yeah.
Well,
This is yeah.
you know, uh, prog was coming back in the early 90s. Anglagard and Anecdoten and the Europe was bringing it back slowly. It's kind of an underground thing bubbling up.
Oh yeah.
And then I guess these old, as you call them, old dogs doing new tricks got
Trying to do new tricks.
got a hair up their ass and like, we need to bring this back. It's back in fashion. And the only thing was they totally forgot how to do it.
Oh yeah. You know, a call was made. You know that maybe a Chris Squire called an Ian Anderson and said, "Have you heard this fucking Dream Theater shit? Have you heard this?" You know that happened.
That started. I think Dream Theater's first album came out in '89. So I don't know how popular that was, but
well, that was with a different singer. That one was that was kind of Kansasy, but then
that
the
one
second
was a
one,
bad rap too. I don't think it's that bad.
No, it's not bad, but I mean, it's better than any of the stuff we're going to talk about. But I mean, yeah.
God,
no, but I mean,
I have pages of notes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, the second album, and then Porcupine Tree was like, if Pink Floyd, like, imagine if like Roger Waters walked in, and the drummer's warming up, the song "Breathe," and he's playing like the intro to like Megadeth Trust. And Waters is like, "Oh, shut that down," But Dream Theater had such great drumming, and I was like, "Wow, this is what it would be like if Floyd had good, aggressive drums."
And they weren't trying to make you zone off or get hot.
Yeah.
From nodding off. Yeah.
Well, Dream Theater was kind of a prog upgrade, wasn't it? It's like, you downloaded the new software, and that's what you got for prog in the '90s.
Mm-hmm.
It's like had a metal edge, had all those classic solos in a more
a little bit of John Anderson influence in the vocals. I could kind of hear,
And there was a lot of Kansas-y stuff in the keyboards, and
but it was metal and it was aggressive, and it was there was a lot of good prog in the '90s. It was not the guys from the '70s doing. Yeah.
Maybe they should have called it the New Prog Revival.
No, I don't think the new wave of prog revival. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, so why don't we start?
In effect, that's what it was.
Let's talk about Roll the Bones. We'll start with that one. I mean,
oh my God, that was where Rush pretty much started the downhill slide into the abyss.
And people say a lot of good things about it. They rediscovered the guitar and all that. I thought it was way worse than their synth stuff. Like, I'll take Grace Under Pressure way over this.
The lyrics are dumb.
I mean, that's
why does it happen? Because it happens. Roll the Bones. This is the man that wrote Xanadu and the Trees. Right?
I know. It's like what happened? It was like high school kids who sniffed too much glue in paper bags came up with poetry or something.
I told my brother. I remember the day that Neil Peart died. I texted my brother, and the first thing he said was, "Well, I hope that we'll have a montage of the rapping skeleton." That was the very first thing he said. Remember the video for Roll the Bones with the rap? Geddy Lee rapping. Who wants to see that?
Do you know they actually consider John Cleese to do the rap part?
No way.
True story. I found it when I was looking up stuff. I was like, "Oh my God!"
John Cleese as rapper.
I did a lot more homework than I did on this. I barely had time to listen to these things, and I'm like, "Oh my God!"
Oh no.
This is what I do at work, Mike. I research stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, good job.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's probably
so I guess the next
where
one
Rush should have broken up and called themselves something else.
But did they do anything good after this? Was there anything that came after Roll the Bones that was like worth?
Nothing that would like blow you away, but
Snakes and Arrows was not too bad, and
it was okay, and so was Clockwork Angel.
Yeah, that was okay,
but it was only okay. It wasn't like, oh my God, I have to listen to Clockwork.
I think the last really good one was probably Signals, probably, or maybe Grace Under Pressure, maybe. So
Signals was that before or after? That was before, wasn't it?
That's one.
Yeah, I think that was before. I liked Grace Under Pressure a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a good record. Yeah.
Then Power Windows kind of started sliding down. And then
Hold
Your Fire.
Power Windows sliding down.
Hold Your Fire with Amy Mann. The thing that remember the videos for that was so bad. The videos with them zooming around. Oh, so bad.
Those 70s bands did not translate well for the most part into 80s bands. And if the whole 80s was a move to pull the carpet under the rug out from under the feet of the 70s artists, it did a great job.
Yeah.
There were very few that survive that.
We used to say that the same hairdresser did Rush that did Heart and Dire Straits, and just pulled them into and Starship, pulled them all into the new, ease up your hair,
Starship. Now that would probably qualify as one of the worst albums of the 80s.
Well, I know. All right, so next one on the list, Jethro Tull, jtull.com.
God, I just listened to that. There's some songs on there that aren't bad, but by that time, Ian Anderson's voice had clearly thoroughly worn out.
Yeah.
He sounds like this old grandpa on Star Search trying to.
I hate that female accompaniment. He's got this
world
kind of weird, like
hybrids or something.
It's like this weird, like I went to Nepal and now I'm going to write all the songs like
Yes.
With this woman that I met in Bangladesh or something.
I think he actually did some semi-rapping on that album too. It wasn't quite rapping. It was more like speaking with gusto or something like that. I don't know what you call it.
Well, and then parts of it made me think that he's trying to do the Robert Plant Eastern thing, like sitting, squatting, and because now Plant pulled that off great, but no, you can't pull that off, Ian Anderson, that late in your career. I mean, come on.
No, his even that album, even what was that one in the 80s? Under Wraps even sounds good compared to that one.
Right, it's bad when you're going, man, Under the Wraps wasn't too bad.
I actually don't mind that one once in a while. It's just it's like an alternative universe. It's like, is this Jethro Tull or Duran Duran? I'm not quite sure.
To be fair, a lot of these things that end up being really bad, not just in prog, but just in 70s and 80s rock in general, these guys are putting together a solo record and they've got like 3 or 4 songs done. And the record company's like, oh, no. You want to call this a Black Sabbath album, or you want to call this a Jethro Tull album. And that's how this shit happens a lot of times,
That's true. Record companies are to blame for pretty much everything.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to it, you're like, this doesn't sound like the band I know at all, because it wasn't meant to be. It was supposed to be.
One of the things that I was thinking when I was listening to that J Tull album was Ian Anderson did not have any variation in his vocal style. It was the same one-trick pony. And it sounded great with folk rock, with those British folk, melodies,
Yeah.
But in the context of something synthesizer based or with like world music backgrounds and stuff, it just like sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. One of the things that I kept doing was every time I started to think that they weren't that bad, I would go back and listen to like Stand Up and like a song like Nothing Is Easy, where the band is like, it sounds like it's a competition where it's like the bass player is trying to outdo the guitar players, trying to outdo the flute player. I mean, and then they have that huge crescendo at the end of the song. And I'm like, this is not the same band that did this,
No, it's almost like they were held at gunpoint to play that crap. Because their heart's not in it at all. It's like like contractual obligations or something.
Such old men, just old men cranking out crap.
And it's kind of dumb, like to think, like .com is this whole thing about warning, the internet could be used for nefarious purposes. Who sings songs about that?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Well, that was all the fear in the late 90s, right? But the whole, there was going to be the Y2K thing and all that.
Well, yeah, that album came out at 1999. So, that people were not savvy about how these things work yet. And they had all the, people kind of live on fear in a lot of ways. Anyway, it's like something to be scared about. It's always a boogeyman around.
Did you like A? That was supposed to be his solo
album. I loved A.
Yeah, my brother
I liked A a lot more than most people do. It was supposed to be a Ian Anderson solo album.
Yep.
That turned into a Jethro Tull, but and it doesn't sound anything like their other stuff, but I still like it because it worked.
Yeah, it's got good songs on it. So
yeah, but a lot of purists absolutely hate it. But a lot of the purists hate what was the other one? Wasn't Thick as a Brick. It was the other.
Oh, Passion Play.
Was that the one song one or?
Oh, Thick as a Brick. Yeah, that's the one song.
I
actually have that to show off later. I have the full original newspaper vinyl. The full newspaper. Yeah.
I can't think of what it's called right now. It's whatever. It wasn't a passion play. Well, maybe it was a passion play.
Well, it was Passion Play, and there was what
Yeah, okay. I'm thinking Minstrel in the Gallery. That's what's messing me up. But anyway,
Passion Play is the one that's got the story of the the story of the bear and the hare or something.
Yeah.
Children's
Okay,
story.
that's the one.
An Aesop fable.
Right. It's got it sounds like a children's story. Yeah. That one.
Yeah, but I mean that's only a small part of it. He's all over the place on that one.
Okay,
I kind
so
of
the
like
next
that
one. Next one, I honestly hope you didn't waste your time on, because I want back every minute I spent listening to Rick Wakeman's Beatles tribute album.
Ooh, that sounds so bad. I don't think I ever would have listened to that.
So bad, because we all want another Muzak version of Norwegian Wood. It was so bad. I mean, there's this fluffy instrumental version of Eleanor Rigby, and it just sounds like when you're on hold, your call is important to us. Please continue to hold, and a representative will be with you
If
in
this
a
is an
moment.
actual emergency, please hang up and
Exactly.
dial 911.
Oh, it was so bad. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Did you say that was who did you say? Rick Wakeman?
Rick Wakeman did. Yeah. It's just called tribute, but it's all Beatles shit. Most of it's instrumental.
What?
Yeah.
Because I started listening to a Kansas album called Always Never the Same.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely awful as well, but I didn't have time to listen to all this.
See, that's a good question. All right. So in your opinion, is Kansas a prog band? I could never decide if they were like a prog band or a really good Southern rock type band.
They were both. They were one of the few American
Not from
bands
the South.
that kind of mixed American boogie rock with prog. And their first only 4 albums were definitely prog. If you listen to Left Overture, that had Carry On My Wayward Son and all that, they were masters of the arena rock style.
Yeah, definitely.
But they also they did the whole shebang on their albums at that point. They had the accessible pop hook tracks, which they did quite well, but then they had these monster prog attacks with, the extended solos and the weird, pompous compositions and all that. I'm terrible at track titles, so I don't remember what.
I only have the first 2. I have the one called Kansas is incredible. I love it. With
I like that one
that
too.
One's great. And Song for America is really good too. And I kind of checked out after that, but they're both really great records. Yeah.
Yeah, Left Overture and Point of No Return are probably their proggiest moments. But they still
made some money.
But they still have plenty of pop and AOR splendor on them, of course. But they have this. But you were mentioning Eleanor Rigby and this Kansas album from 1998 called Always Never the Same.
Yeah.
Starts out with the absolutely horrible version of Eleanor Rigby. I'm like, what a lame way to start out an album. It's basically one of these they do their songs with a symphony type
The first
of thing.
song is the cover?
Yes.
Oh, that's terrible. That's just like putting up the white flag.
No shit. I'm like, what the fuck is this shit?
Oh,
and
we got nothing. We got nothing for you.
And it's, what's his name? John Walsh, I think was his name.
Mm-hmm.
His vocals were totally shot by that time, and he just sounds awful. So if I would have had the time to listen to this one, it might have made pretty high on this list.
There's this horrible. Are you familiar with the group Leo at all?
Leo, like Leo?
Yeah. They do nothing but covers, and they try to make all these songs into metal songs. They're the worst shit you've ever heard. I mean, I love a good cover if you do something different with it, if you make it your own. These guys did it. They do an Eleanor Rigby that makes you want to beat your head against the wall. Horrible.
No, I haven't heard of them. But if I do ever come close, I will stay clear.
Yeah, stay clear.
No, don't
on
do
your
it.
advice alone.
Yeah. They just kind of try to make, like, they'll do Phil Collins songs. They'll do.
They did
Tears for Fears.
Full version. I'm like, no.
And it doesn't even really sound like metal.
All
they have no shame.
Play the same song with like kind of gruff vocals. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Really stupid.
But the 90s.
They have a lot of Spotify.
They have about 40 albums.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, obviously they're going for the quantity over any quality, route.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sorry. It's like Buckethead. Oh my God.
Yeah, I
And,
admire how you've hung in there with him. Yeah.
you know, I haven't hung in there. I kind of took a break, and then he released another 100 albums, and
I know,
I'm
but
like,
you made a big dent, didn't you? I mean,
I did.
yeah.
I stupidly went where no man dared go before. But there were a few gems in there, actually. It's just
Yeah.
that you get tired of, I mean, how many lullaby albums can he recycle? I mean,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. He's like, it's like he records everything. Everything gets recorded, everything gets put out, you know.
Yeah, and what that shows is that most of what he has in him is utter crap. I mean,
Right. Which is a great segue into, in my opinion, Vi, Sex and Religion. Uh-oh.
oh my God, here's where we differ. Um, you know, granted, I'll make no claims that that was Vi's finest moment,
Yeah.
but I I took that album one time. I took a handful of odd albums on a road trip one time, and I have fond memories of that album driving through the middle of Nevada, just like
Wow.
over and over and over and over and over. And it's a very strange album because it has and to me it has some great songs. It's just that he was trying to do too much, and it comes off as a very disjointed album.
Yeah.
It's like it'll be like an Indian raga, and then it will be like an industrial metal explosive, you know, like that song Pig, and then it will be some weird sound collagey thing, you know, what
Yeah.
that culminates in some woman. I guess it was his wife giving birth and all this kind of stuff. I
I
guess
remember I was
the
big into Guitar Player magazine in the 90s, which is a lot of times they would put this shit like this that we're talking about. They put these guys like Mike Oldfield and stuff on the covers because they were all like in bed together, all the Guitar Player magazine guys and these old prog guys. Anyway,
yeah.
even they called it an overdub orgy.
And I found an interview with Devin Towson, and he says that he still cannot listen to this album.
You know, there was a Desmond Child involvement because you had to have that in the 90s if you were
That's
a
true.
magazine.
He was on top of his game back
Mm.
then. I didn't
I had
realize
to
it
have
had
Desmond
Ahmet
Child.
Zappa though. Now that I'm looking at this, had Ahmet Zappa on background vocals. So
Matt, really?
God, and
Yeah,
it has
he's the one he finds a dusty old bootleg from like 1972 and he says, you know, I'm going to press this to vinyl and it's only $400 a copy. He's doing all that now, right?
now it did have some very that album had some very bad songs like "Still My Bleeding Heart" is, you know,
Yeah.
very cringeworthy.
Well, speaking of cringeworthy, here's a good time for me to explain this. Steve Vai's album Flexible. Okay.
God.
So
You don't like it?
I beyond like it. Okay, so here's the story of me and my brother and Steve Vai's Flexible. So we got it after we loved, you know, Eat 'Em and Smile, and we were like, who's this Steve Vai guy, right? So we get it, and we're listening to it, and we're like horrified the first couple times we hear it, right? And then we started to play it for other people to see their reactions, and then we started to really like it, and then it became a virus where we started to not like anything else but Flexible. And I remember drawing, this was early 90s. Like I did the Jason Becker thing. I was drawing like the little green men thing on my jeans and stuff when I would play gigs.
Oh my God.
I was way over the top. I mean, we were just, it was really like a sickness. I went back and listened to Flexible this week and I was like, this is so.
He played it for me coming home from work. I'm like, okay, that's enough.
It's the happiness. Like Vai has this kind of happy vibe to his music and it's tough to take, you know, if you're a metal fan.
Well, he was definitely still on the Zappa vibe at that point because he was just fresh out of Zappa on Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch and all that.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that record too because
what's that?
I have a hard time with that record too because like half of it's really good and then half of it's just I don't know. It's just too much Vai wanking, you know.
It's out there, that's for sure.
Like that one song about, I think it's called "The Drowning Witch." The first half of it sounds like it's from like Roxy and Elsewhere, right? And then it switches to studio, and it totally loses me. It's like,
it's an alternative reality kind of album.
It is.
It took me a while. I learned to appreciate it. Same with Flexible. You know, I started out liking Vai with Passion and Warfare, and you know his guitar shredding, all that. And so, you go to that one, it's like, what the fuck is this shit? But as I got more into prog, I started appreciating it because it's more focused on, proggy stuff.
Yeah, this is
weirdness, jazz rock fusion.
Before we even got into Zappa, this is just how this album just like brainwashed us. There's a song on it called Junkie where he talks about smoking laundry detergent, and we actually did try to smoke laundry detergent when I was in college. We rolled cigarettes and whiffs. It was awful.
Oh my God, really?
That's how this album possessed my brain, And I would say things like King Crimson Red. Obviously you haven't heard the Boy Girl Song by Steve Vai.
It sounds like High School Musical.
That's the thing about Flexible is it's like one great song, then one song like really, and then another song it's like it's kind of a hit and miss. I love some songs like Salamanders in the Sun. It's like a Sesame Street happy song that shows happy people running on the sidewalks and stuff. And then they'll have like Lovers Are Crazy.
Right. That one. Oh no, I like see that one. That one takes me back. It starts to. It's like the Borg. They're taking over again.
I kind of like the freaky ones, like Bill's Private Parts and Next Stop Earth, and those little weird ones. But the Attitude song is, classic vibe.
That actually sounds like that's got a riff, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the only riffer on there. Everything
on
else.
There, yeah. Like, I can imagine like the people that liked Eat 'em and Smile that went back and bought it and were just horrified when they played it. What is this?
I see it like Shaun of the Dead where they're throwing it to kill zombies,
Yeah, like we were listening to the Boy Girl Song tonight riding home, and we're like halfway through it, and I said, we're further into this song than probably 99% of the population ever made it.
Yeah, that's probably my least favorite song on that one too, but
oh my God.
Yeah.
I kind of but getting back to like Passion and Warfare, I mean back to Sex and Religion, I always thought it was kind of dotted line to Van Halen 3 because it reminded that they both were like kind of like butt rock overdoses, sort of like the whole Gary Sharon. And
I actually never heard Van Halen 3. I could never bring myself to
Sex and Religion, where you're just like, what's he doing? Like, what these songs have no, it's too much of everything.
There's no continuity to the album.
Right.
That's for sure. It's just throw all the spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. And unfortunately, too much stuck.
I know they said Terry Bozzio, play your fucking ass off, and he goes, all right, I will. You can tell that.
Hey, it launched Devin Townsend into the progressive metal world. So.
How would you like that in your career? The only album you did that really sucks is your very first.
He made it up with Strapping Young Lad. And,
he did. And many others. Yeah, he is a genius.
And it's not, I don't think it's as horrible as some people think it is.
It's not as bad as the next one, which is Saga, Pleasure and Pain.
I listened to that today.
It made me angry to listen to it.
It's definitely pain, not pleasure.
It's mostly like Loverboyish pomp riffs. And
I would rather listen to Loverboy. There's the difference.
Johnny wants to shoot off his rocket.
Well, at least Loverboy had really catchy pop hooks. It's like Turn Me Loose and The Kid Is Hot Tonight, Hot Girls in Love. No, Saga's just like
they weren't even that good to start with.
Yeah, they were never one of my favorites either, to be honest.
Canada Rock, Yeah. But I tell you what, I'm not gonna look it up because I like sometimes I just like to leave mysteries unsolved, like they say in Spinal Tap, just leave it unsolved, right? But to me, when it's this bad, I'm gonna guess that like either the drummer or the bass player said, "This is my band, and I'm gonna get my wife to play the drums, and I'm gonna get my brother-in-law to play the guitar." Like that's to me, that's what that because that's when it's this bad and this not connected to the original band that has to be it. I know a bunch of people that could be the new Saga. That's my theory.
Well, and they were obviously trying to sound like grunge band, Like
and then they have that one song that Where's My Money? That's like KMFDM kind of thing.
Yeah, and they obviously had no clue how to pull it off. I mean, it was
because when you're at a rave, you want to hear Saga.
I haven't really heard a lot of Saga. I have that one album with Tonight I'm on the Loose. And I
That's the one. That's the one that you need to hear because
I
you
have
know
that
all
one.
there is to know about Saga, really.
I have that one. And I have the debut. The debu's all right too. Other than that, I have never gotten into Saga that much. So I assumed they mostly sounded like what this album that I just heard today sounded like.
Yeah, they're like the kind of band that like heard like Grace Under Pressure, and they were like, "We're from Canada, we can do that."
Yeah. Well,
Not everybody in Canada.
I didn't have time to listen to the whole thing, so I couldn't make it on my top 5.
Well, good for you, because by the time I got like 3/4 way through it, I was literally getting angry. It was so bad. Like, not many albums make me mad. This did. Ugh. Hallows Eve, Evil Never Dies also makes me angry because it's the same thing. It's just, if you've ever heard that one, it's so
Which
bad.
one?
Hallows Eve, Evil Never Dies. The bass player did exactly what I just described and got a bunch of random people together and called it a Hallows Eve album, and it was just like the worst piece of shit ever. I don't even know what.
Okay, I don't even know that band. I mean,
yeah, Hallows Eve. They were a Metal Blade, kind of a thrash horror kind of thing. So,
Atlanta.
anyway, let's move on. So yes, this is before we would get the pleasure of 400 symphonic Yes albums in the 2000s. I guess we'll talk about Union first. What do you think of that one?
I listened to Union today. Yeah. Part of me thinks it's not as bad as everybody makes it out to be, but
yeah.
And then I'm like, wait a minute. These are the pinnacle of prog rock in the 70s. They don't deserve a pass.
I agree. They don't. If you
It's
go
like,
back and
no, if that was just some band coming out of college, it would have been an okay album, right? But no, that was Yes. And it's like, my impression was what everybody wanted was what came after Relayer, like Yes, back on track, the old days. But what they got was like everything Yes had done, including the solo members, and put into a blender, and and resulting in a bunch of chunks of things that didn't quite blend.
Yeah.
There's some awful AOR ballads on there that just ruin the album.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of starts out listenable, but by the time you get into it, like halfway through, it's like, oh my God, what the fuck were these guys smoking when they came up with this?
Rick Wakeman said the album should be called Onion because every time he hears it, he cries.
He has a sense of humor.
He does, but he has a terrible covers album.
What it basically did was announce to the world that the old proggers suck. So you new guys take over. And that's kind of what happened.
If you read the Wikipedia story of the making of the album, it's like the old guys that were in Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe, they didn't want to contribute shit. They were just like, well, here's a demo from 1984. You can use this. Here's part of a song that was on my solo album. And the producer, Jonathan, his name was Jonathan Elias, and then he got saddled with Trevor Rabin, and they were supposed to kind of make this into a Yes album from the crap that like Bruford and Steve Howe and all had sent in.
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
it sounds like one of those do we really have to go to school today kind of albums.
And then
I
heard Lift Me Up on the radio. I thought it wasn't too bad at the time.
It's listenable, but it's also forgettable. It's like there's nothing on that album that makes you go, oh my God, I want to hear that again. but yet it's not like, oh my God, it's not as bad as that Saga album, for example. At least they can play. John Anderson hadn't lost his voice yet, but there's a really boring like guitar instrumental in there that makes you realize, oh my God, Steve Howe has definitely jumped the shark. It's like he used to do this amazing classical stuff that was impossible to play. And all of a sudden it's just like this like grandpa music stuff. And
right,
I'm like,
of course, and then if you consider the competition, like we keep saying, Dream Theater, Porcupine Tree, Opeth, it's just.
Oh hell yeah!
Why would I listen to this?
Well, I mean that metal obviously upped the game for everything: the energy level of music, the proficiency, the technicality, all that.
Yeah.
Production, you name it.
We have another Yes and Open Your Eyes from '94.
I don't know that one.
That's the one where they had to go out and get another singer.
It's like starting to cook a cake and realizing you don't have any sugar.
I don't know that one. I mean, I did listen to. I thought I was gonna think the latter was bad, but when I listened to it the other day, I'm like, that one I actually don't mind.
Like Steve Howe wouldn't fly over to join the album. He wouldn't fly over and write and record sessions. And he got there like when it was basically done. And he claimed that Anderson and himself had little collaborative input. And he said that it wasn't really a Yes album. And it doesn't sound like Yes. And it's far worse than Union, I think. It's just pop songs. It's like their Invisible Touch album.
It was probably back in the days when the music executives really told you what you were going to sound like, and they had more control. And I don't think that happens as much today.
I just get the impression that the original guys from Yes were so fucking lazy. They were just like, oh, I'm not going to fly all the way out there for that.
They just been milked of all their creativity by that point. It's like, just take this demo from 20 years ago and we'll make something work out of it. And I don't know.
I just need to be here in LA in my house with my cocaine and
Yeah, they're all rich and they're not hungry anymore.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk about that. Okay, so I'm surprised we got this far without me bringing this up. These guys made so much money in the 80s. I mean, if you think about it, okay, like let's just take Genesis. I mean, we know Rush made a lot of money with moving pictures, but Genesis. So in 85, 86, I looked this up. Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins, No Jacket Required, Genesis, Invisible Touch, Mike and the Mechanics, and GTR, which was Steve Hackett and Howe. They were all like top 10 albums within a 1-2 year period. Can you imagine that?
True. It's true.
God, I mean, like how much we could not and in the US we could not get enough Genesis dotted line Genesis stuff. So these guys,
you certainly couldn't get away from it. That was another. Now that you mention this, I mean, or sort of allude to it, I was thinking some of these '90s prog albums that sound so bad, they were still stuck in the '80s AOR thing. They had no idea what the '90s was about.
Right, because they had
they didn't get the memo that
their money.
Yeah. That's exactly. They're like how rich when you get rich and you lose your way and you're more interested in going and laying on the beach instead of
surrounded by people that tell you everything you're doing is just great,
feeding you drugs and giving you booze and all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's just the classic rock and roll derail the train.
It's the 90s and you're like, God, the price of cocaine is going up so much, I got to make a record.
Yeah. I thought Talk was pretty bad. I don't remember it right now, but it's like Union probably just set the stage for this horrible Yes trajectory that really didn't add. I did like Magnification. That one was actually a decent Yes album, even if it wasn't up to their 70s grace.
They were definitely a lot of the stuff they did in the 90s is reeks of contractual obligations.
Yeah, it so does. It so does.
And then the one that you suggested, Galahad.
Oh my God, I listened to that again today too. That is like the worst neo prog. It's just
what is like that album cover. That album cover says, "No, we don't need to hire a professional. I know a guy that can
It's
paint."
like high school doodles, right? This is from my notebook from 8th grade. It's like whiny. It's like the dude is like. And the cheesy synthesizers are still from the 80s. Like it sounds like it came from like 1981 from like a garage demo of somebody who wanted to be Marillion.
Well, Stace made an interesting point about this record.
Yeah, the super watery, annoying, croony guitars and then the croony vocals, and I could only guess to get through that watery guitar they needed that song called Evaporation.
Oh my God, that one is the absolute worst.
Yeah,
if you want to torture yourself and
You know
you'll
what
have
Stace
permanent
Stace
scars.
said,
That song will do it.
they said these guys heard Roll the Bones and said that's what
Yeah.
we should be doing.
Even Roll the Bones is better than this. I hate to say.
I mean, they were shooting for Roll the Bones. That's
They
the thing.
missed. They didn't
They
hit
didn't
it.
get there,
Yeah,
but that's what they were kind of shooting for. That's
certainly
how sad
missed
these
the
guys
target.
were. Oh my gosh.
And you know
All
that
right.
the difference between this album and the other ones, though, is this was Galahad's first album. So, and they actually turned out to be a decent band. So it just goes to show there were some new dogs that didn't know any tricks too.
Yeah, that's true.
And they were trying to be something that they weren't. Whereas the other side of the equation, most of these albums we're talking about are the old school, the old guard, totally lost their way in the wilderness of the 90s alternative scene.
Absolutely.
Floundering around like, headless guppies,
Which is a perfect segue to Steve Hackett's Genesis Revisited.
I've never heard that one. Doesn't sound like I want to.
No, all right. So this was sometime in the 90s. So he got a lot of flack for doing this. But so he went back and re-recorded a lot of stuff from the Peter Gabriel era and some of the Phil Collins era. And I mean, it's like he kind of did a kind of a shreddy reinterpretation of a lot of the songs, but he did get rid of that goddamn Wurlitzer. So some of the songs actually sound better.
Okay.
That Wurlitzer is hard to take,
Personally, I've never been the biggest Genesis fan, so
well, here's the thing. All right, so here's my question. Why would one do this? All right, so he made his money in GTR. He left Genesis, I think, for what? And then there were 3 around that era.
Yeah.
Is this what kind of cash grab is this? Is this I didn't make any of that invisible touch money? Like why would
maybe he thought he could do it better?
I'm just having a hard time understanding why he has to remake stuff like Dance of a Volcano with spoken word vocals,
I don't get it either. Who is the metal band that just Voivod just released an album of all covers of the Piggy Days. Right. And I'm like, why?
And no one's calling bullshit on it because it's Voivod. But I haven't I refuse to listen to it because I don't understand. It's not okay for them either,
And I'm just like, okay, that this dude, the new guy, is trying to out Piggy, and it's like he's already proven he can fill his slot. So it's like now what you're gonna just write Piggy off by doing all his stuff too? It's
I don't understand it either.
I really think it's look, I can do it better.
It's ego run amok. It's like he's not.
Yeah, I'm wondering, did you guys not get paid for Roer? Did you not get paid for Killing Technology? I always think that whenever there's a re-recording, I always think, all right, who did get paid?
If it's a remastering, that's one thing.
This is a full re-recording.
But no, I don't get it.
Well, the thing is, those old Voivod is considered. Those are classic albums. Those are like people. They've only gotten more popular as time goes on. Even if they probably weren't very popular at the time, but now they're like cult, royalty for progressive thrash metal. So to touch those sacred cows, is like pretty bold. It's like, I mean, I was hoping for another album like The Wake. I thought that was a really good album. Even the last one, Anarcho.
The last few albums have all been good. I mean, I
don't so this was like, what?
It's like, going into your local church and being like, I'm just going to put the Sistine Chapel up here. I'm just going to paint it.
Speaking of which, when I was looking at the worst prog albums of all time on the Rate Your Music charts, it happens to be Pope Francis.
What's Pope Francis? I don't even know that. What is that?
Apparently, he did an album of.
Oh, the actual Pope did.
He was the one who was the bouncer.
No, the actual Pope, not a band named Pope Francis. The actual Pope did some, reading prayers or whatever to progressive rock in the background. And it is officially on Rate Your Music considered the worst prog album of all time. Imagine that.
That's great. And then, your band's warming up and they're like, God damn it, I hope I don't have to follow the Pope again.
Yes. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Hey, by the way, do you ever hear Opeth's cover of that Genesis song For Absent Friends?
Maybe what album is it on?
I can't remember. I can't remember, but it's great. It
I have
destroys.
every Opeth album and I've listened to them all and I don't
It's
remember
a
track.
short instrumental. They don't do the vocals, but it destroys Steve Hackett's
Is
version.
it one of the metal albums or is it one of the non-metal albums?
It's one of the non-metal albums. Yeah.
Okay. So there's not a so it's probably one of the newer ones.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say it was in the 2000s that they did it.
All
But
right.
it was one of those where I listened to it like kind of like the way when Slayer did Aggressive Perfector, where it took me 600 listens to realize it was the Judas Priest song. I'm like, wait a minute. Hold on a second.
Sometimes they do such a good job in covering something it's unrecognizable.
Well, to be fair, Slayer says stand fight, and Halford said stand punch. So it's a little, a little different.
That's
Did
why
you
he got a
get
band called Fist, right?
Yeah, Fist was not that bad. The first Fist was okay. The second Fist was not good, but I thought he
I
did.
only heard the first one. It was
First, it's not that
okay.
bad for Pantera rock,
I mean, I haven't heard that in so long. I don't even remember what it sounds like at this point. But
I went
I
back
remember
and re-listened to it a couple years ago, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that.
it's okay. It's not. It's no Judas Priest or
No, it's not.
even Halford's solo. But
yeah. How about Strictly Incorporated? Did you get to that one?
Strictly Incorporated.
Tony Banks and the dude from Wang Chung.
Does this count as a supergroup?
Is this serious?
Yeah, seriously, it was one of these. I don't know. There's a certain style of production that's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. It's when these proggy guys, they try to do like Steely Dan, Asia, and they just fall flat on their face. That jazzy kind of, I don't like
Wang Chung and Prague, though. I never would have associated those even in the same thought,
Yeah.
I mean,
but here's the thing, right? So it's all basically like kind of jazz pop. And then you get to the end and he's like, but wait a minute, there's a 17-minute song, just in case you're one of my old fans. It's 17 minutes of the same shit.
Like any of them are still around to listen to it.
Right. Like who's giving advice here? Like
I know. I mean, it's like some of these albums you're like, you cannot think of any rational reason why
do they exist?
Unleash this onto the public. It's like they must have been really drugged up or something and somebody whispered in their ear,
Were you ever into Michael Oldfield?
Yeah, I like some Mike Oldfield. I mean, who doesn't like some Tubular Bells? And
there you go, the Exorcist theme. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually liked, there's an album called Songs from Distant Earth.
Yeah, Rate Your Music loves him. Like the first 4 or 5 albums are all bold.
Yeah. I don't think, to me, his albums are kind of like, there's like half the album is great and half of it's like, overrated. I'm not particularly fond, like Hargis Ridge, for example, and Omadon. I like half the album a lot, but the other half just doesn't seem like the album works as a whole. To me, it's kind of hit and miss with Songs of Distant Earth. That's the one I like. It's a lot of people don't like it, but it's like a really good new age album. Really,
there's no drums on Tubular Bells, so he lost me right away with that one. And then I've learned this about myself. Like I'm okay with no singing, I'm okay with no guitar, but I can't do the Tangerine Dream, no drums. I can't do it. I have to have some.
You're a drum chauvinist, huh?
Apparently I am. I'm a drum snob. Yeah. And then I love the way in Tubular Bells, he'll start announcing his multi-instrumentalism where he'll go acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Slightly distorted electric guitar.
That's the part that is probably the cheesiest. Yeah, you're right.
That doesn't going to redo Tubular Bells. There's Tubular Bells 1, 2, and 3 at this point.
Oh my God.
He's running back to it.
There's I think there's 4 of them, isn't there?
Is there 4? I always thought 3.
No, there's 1, 2, 3, and then there's Tubular Bells 2003.
Oh my God.
I know, it's like, come on, dude.
Yeah. Well,
Move
this
on.
one is really in that kind of limp Steely Dan sort of vein. With terrible backup singers, he calls them the sassy choir.
There's a group of girls.
They're trying to do the call it Deacon Blue. They're trying to do the whole age of Steely Dan thing.
God, that sounds pretty.
It's really
gag worthy just hearing about it.
Yeah. Yeah, Steely Dan. That's another band that I love, but they created a lot of. They set up a lot of people tried to shoot for that star, and just oh god, so bad.
Yeah, there's certain bands that are unreplicatable, and Steely Dan is one of those. So I don't know why anybody even tries.
I love watching documentaries about Steely Dan because they'll be like, we couldn't get the right swing for this song, so we flew in these 3 guys from Africa that had bones in their noses, and you're like, wow, just unlimited budget apparently.
Wow.
Yeah.
No wonder you can't compete with that. Just 5 people in with bones in their noses. I mean, no wonder they had the upper edge.
Walter Becker's like, we had to find him. He was living in a grass hut, but we brought him here, and he totally nailed the track. All right, I think we're at the creme de la creme ELP in the hot seat.
That is deserving to be the biggest turd in prog paradise. It's
now, I will say this, that we have had 2 different interviews. We had an interview with an interview with King Foley from Deceased, and with Howard Helm from Zahn. Both of them said Tarkus was like their Desert Island album.
Wow.
Yeah. Very diverse, 2 very different people.
I was never the hugest ELP fan. The first 4 albums are okay. I like them. I just don't love them like a lot of proggers do. But everything after that is pretty awful. And this in the hot seat is definitely.
How'd you like that Daddy Come Home song with the socks and shoes line? Oh, Jesus.
Oh my God, yes. That it's like, really? Am I hearing this? It's like, this is ELP. It's like
somebody's in the studio going, you nailed it, Keith. That's it. That's right.
His vocals are pretty. His vocals are particularly awful on that album.
Sounds like he's really lost like a half step, maybe more.
It's
okay. And I found this really weird story that Keith Emerson was apparently like to wrestle his keyboard on stage for whatever reason. And once he lost to the damn thing because he knocked it over on himself and was pinned beneath this massive instrument and had to be rescued by roadies. So there's always that.
I wouldn't take on a Hammond B3. No.
That's a story fit for the Spinal Tap movie.
It is. Being trapped under your work.
Even better than a bizarre gardening accident.
Yeah. There's a couple. Do you count ELO as prog or no?
Generally not, but their first couple albums were prog, I guess.
Yeah.
So I consider them like prog related because
prog adjacent.
Well, they started out as prog. The first album was, I don't know if you'd call that rock though. That's the only thing.
I saw that you actually reviewed the first 2 or 3. I started with El Dorado. That was where I checked in with them.
I don't like El Dorado. I mean, it's okay, but it's I consider them symphonic rock more or less.
Well, the legend is that you can play El Dorado along with the Wizard of Oz, and it like lines up.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, that's the legend. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the album cover's got like glass slippers and shit on it. Yeah. I mean, the Wizard of Oz slippers and.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I like the first 3 albums the best. They're just more interesting. Then they just got more formulaic.
I actually enjoyed ELO Part 2. I'm kind of an ELO junkie. I kind of think Jeff. I like speculating how much money Jeff Lynne made in the 70s. Just
my God.
I mean, just wow.
Yeah, he was good at what he did. I liked him in The Move too.
I got to get more into The Move. I've only heard a couple albums from them.
It's kind of like pre-ELO. It's kind of really sophisticated pop pseudo prog.
Yeah.
And
You got to give the man props because they had to haul around actual cellos and violins and shit back then.
yeah, well,
There
that
was no synthesizer.
There's no backing tracks.
Yeah.
that first album, there's really nothing that is like it. I mean, it's considered like Renaissance, neo-medieval folk music.
Didn't he like live with Steve? Didn't he like live with George Harrison for a while, or he was friends with George Harrison or something? Jeff Lynne.
Could be.
There's a dotted line Beatles thing there between ELO.
Well, his whole operation was based around taking the classical music sounds of the Beatles and putting them to pop music. He loved that aspect of the Beatles and wanted to continue it after they disbanded. So I'd have to say he did a pretty good job at doing it too. He's
he made some cheddar cheese. So.
He made some cheddar cheese, and he knew how to milk a pop hook for all it was worth. Just synthesize it and give a beat to it, and make it disco and symphonic rock all at the same time.
ELO's music is still in tons of commercials and movies and stuff even now.
Oh, he's making $1 million a second, for God's sake.
Shit, I mean, it's crazy. He's in those what's the Marvel movie, the Guardians of the Galaxy, like that's all Mr. Blue Sky and shit. I mean, he's making tons of money on that stuff.
Yeah, those movies are pretty soundtracky, aren't they?
Yeah,
it's like all the 70s and 60s. That's like you hear traffic
coming back, and the world gone mad.
Yeah, they're really milking the past in those Marvel movies.
They start playing that saga shit though. I'm never gonna watch.
They should have played that in the last Ant-Man movie. God, that was like saga worthy. That was such a bad movie. I don't know if you saw that, but
no, I didn't see that last one. So.
Quantumania.
We're at the point now. These are albums that I have not listened to. I didn't listen to John Anderson, The More You Know. I don't know if you know that album.
No, and I don't want to know it.
Yeah, I ran out of time.
I know.
I know it's bad, but I didn't listen.
The cover's horrible. They're running over a perfectly good chair with a locomotive, which makes no sense. The chair's like strapped like it's a damsel in distress.
There's nobody in the chair?
No.
Oh my God.
It's just a chair. And, and then they had both Carl Palmer and Keith Emerson had nerve damage and injuries to their hand, arm that they both later had to have surgeries from. So maybe they should have waited to record this till they were fixed,
Again, I think contractual obligation.
They had another turkey in the 90s too called Black Moon, it looks like. So they had two very poorly rated albums in the 90s that everybody hates. Everybody.
All right, I'm going to run upstairs and grab my things to show off real quick. Be right back. There won't be many.
Okay.
We're in close quarters down here.
There's so many bad albums, it looks like, from the 90s.
A horrendous amount.
What are you were you showing off your shirt?
Oh, no. We're in this weird little pit here. And the way we have ourselves I have to get up so he can get out.
Okay.
It's not done by design.
Yeah, it looks pretty spacious.
Yeah, it's our basement.
By California standards.
Have you heard Mark and my wonderful production?
Heard what?
Wait, Mark and I put out a song.
You did?
It's on YouTube. It's called The Ballad of Silas Turner, and we did a rockumentary that's about 6 minutes long to go with it. You'll love it.
Oh my God. I'll check it out. What is it?
Yeah, it's a whole 6-minute rockumentary. It's pretty funny.
You'll have to send it to me, or
I'll send you the link. That's fine. Yeah.
Just send me a link after you're done.
Yeah.
Okay. I was disappointed in myself because I know there was a time when I had a lot more elfin magic than I have now. So let's start with this one. All right. Have you heard this? Jethro Tull, Nothing Is Easy from the Isle of Wight. I
actually have that one, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just fucking amazing. I mean, they were trying to upstage Hendrix.
Yeah.
Like it was his last gig or something, and they are just breathing fire for this thing.
I actually started reviewing that one time and got sidetracked, and then the whole thing derailed. And I probably have a half a review somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I got to get
I
this on
was
record.
impressed
Mine
with
was
that one
so good.
myself. That was Jethro Tull at its peak.
Absolutely. I mean, like I was trying to figure out like what records these are from. Like Dharma for one, and they actually do Nothing Is Easy, the song I talked about before. And the version of My God on here is just like Black Sabbath or something. It's crazy. You know what I mean? Ridiculous.
It's high. It's very. It's like, God. It's like high up in the ratings and rate your music.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's sort of like they were more blues than codpiece. They hadn't quite gone to that whole. I mean, they were like heavy blues, you know.
1970. I mean, that was right when they were
1970, yeah.
transitioning in from the you know the what the heck was the, I can't remember that, Stand Up and Benefit, as they were transitioning into Aqualung.
Right.
So that was pretty much their, when they were on fire.
But I liked them in the late 70s too. I liked Heavy Horses and Songs from the Wood. I thought that was really good. And I love Bursting Out live, where he says, and on the small but potent glockenspiel, like
That's Mark's pet name for me.
what small but this is my small but potent glockenspiel. All right, the first Camel album. I don't know why I have this. Do you like these guys?
I do like that one.
Okay. I don't know why I got only this one on CD, but I did for some reason.
That one is probably my favorite Camel album.
It's good. It's really good. I remember really liking it. You're more of a Canterbury prog man than I am, I think.
Well, that's kind
never
of
much into Gentle Giant or any of that stuff.
That's kind of an acquired taste, It's like, I don't know how I acquired it. I just kind of did. I always veer towards the weirdest aisle in the supermarket for music. So
yeah,
it has to be. So when you add weird and loud and aggressive, that's my favorite. So avant-garde metal is usually my top, my favorite.
Do you know these guys, Quartermass?
Yeah, Quartermass.
Yeah.
I reviewed that one.
Black Sheep of the Family. Rainbow did it, but this version is way better.
Well, they were
guitars. No guitars.
They were a Deep Purple. They were out like a guitarless Deep Purple.
Right. This album's great, and this is. I like the cover. It's as soon as you see it, you're like, all right, that's Hypnosis. That's the Pink Floyd.
Yeah, that was definitely a grab your attention album cover.
Mm-hmm.
There were some very bad album covers. That could be another whole topic, is just bad album cover. Like, a prog album with an apple on the cover. It's like, seriously.
I saw an interview with, like, I think it was Glenn Tipton. One of the guys, either KK or Glenn. I think it was Glenn, and he was just like spouting off about how no Quartermass, no Judas Priest, and I was like, wow, I would never made that connection. But,
considering how do you go from no guitar to twin guitars? Yeah.
Yeah, he just said that the Quartermass was just so mind blowing, and I just thought, imagine the drugs. All right, now we're getting into the really geeky stuff. The Jethro Tull Greatest Hits songbook. Needed to learn.
Is it for learning how to play guitar, or just learning how to
guitar? And every song requires a capo, so just a little insight into Ian Anderson's guitar style. But I mean, listen to this. This choice of this is back. I bought this in like the 80s. This is back when you could just pick whatever songs you wanted for a guitar book. Cheap Day Return, Fat Man, Glory Row, Life's a Long Song, Mother Goose, My God, Skating Away on the Thin Ice of a New Day, A Song for Jeffrey, Saucity, You're a Woman, Thick as a Brick, Up to Me, Witch's Promise, and Wondering Aloud. No Aqualung.
All that is in that thin little book. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just a really weird choice of songs. It's a lot of benefit, and
yeah, that is an odd choice of songs. You would think, Cross-Eyed Mary or something.
Right. I mean, the songs
Locomotive Breath or something like that would be in there. But
to me, really, I mean, just really strange. So, but anyway, all right. So, Guitar Legends magazine.
Rush. Yeah.
It's just every article they ever wrote about Rush. I was buying like broccoli, and I was at the grocery store, and I was like, "Oh, this is going in the cart." Absolutely.
Well, that's a very eye-catching cover, and
yeah.
Yeah, every article about Rush, I might be tempted to pick that up
Yes.
too. I don't
Yeah.
buy a lot of magazines anymore.
Yeah. But it's a funny story. My ex's cousin was over for Thanksgiving dinner, and I have like tons of tattoos, but he had never gotten a tattoo, and he was a huge Rush guy, and he was gonna get the dude right from Hemispheres. And let me just make this clear. I had two copies of Hemispheres. Even back in the 80s, I had a copy to play and a copy to keep. So that's how geeky I am.
Ooh, smart.
I
Hope it's in mint condition still.
Well, no, I sold the shitty one that went to all the beer parties, and I got like a ton of money for it too. But I still
Wow.
have the mint one. It's probably right here. But anyway, but I remember like I made this comment when we were like eating Thanksgiving dinner, and I said, "Well, if you don't mind having a naked man on your shoulder," and it like fucked him up huge. He was like, "Oh, I never thought about that," and I think it's still it probably still bothers him to this day. God, I can't get a Rush tattoo.
We could have put some Bermuda shorts on him or something.
It's like, well, it depends how much of a homophobe you are. I have a guitar player magazine with Steve Lukather from Toto on the front.
My God.
Everybody's favorite guitarist, of
why is
course.
this needed in life? I mean, like,
Oh my God, those guitar playing magazines were pretty funny. It's like they would put like just these like a grunge guitar player on there. Somebody could play 3 chords, and it's like he's the guitar hero.
see, I found the opposite. I found that they kept putting these fucking old dinosaurs that we're talking about on the front. Like, I would be like, oh my God, Steve Howe, you're still alive. Like
Well,
that's
that too.
they were like always on the board of directors for guitar player, like Mike Oldfield and Steve Hackett. And I'm like, oh my God, Steve Hackett.
But
No,
they
we're
would
not looking
they
at
would
that.
they would kind of throw the newer generation a bone by putting like Limp Biscuit on there or something. It's like
Exactly.
I'm
All
like,
right. All right, two
seriously?
more and then I'm done. As
Oh
promised,
yeah.
the vinyl thick as a brick with the full newspaper. Yes.
Now we're talking some of the best prog albums ever.
Yes, yes. There's parts of this record that I hear Iron Maiden in when it's really thundering the dun 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 dun
Oh
dun dun
yeah.
dun.
It's a
Yeah.
gallop.
Yeah, I hear the gallop that Steve Harris stole from this record. I really do.
Another one where he totally got his bass style from was this Renaissance album.
Hmm.
Uh, I wrote a review on it,
I don't
and
know those guys. Renaissance, where are they from? Are they UK?
yeah, you never heard of Scheherazade and other
Mm,
tales? It was a kind of a symphonic prog band where it was based around a classical keyboardist and a female vocalist,
okay.
and they had an album called, I think it's Prologue. Yeah, and they had this last song was called Raja Khan, and it has that classic Steve Harris bass riff, and I'm like,
Okay.
that's where he got his bass style from.
Yeah.
Except, this is one song. The song is unlike anything else in the Renaissance canon.
Yeah.
So Steve Harris is like, well, hey, they didn't use it. I might as well adopt it, and ran away with it. Obviously, he did a much better job at marketing it, but
Yeah.
it was like, I love that when you hear those influences from something that came before, and it's like, that's where they got it. Eureka.
Well, you know what Mark pointed out to me is how much Tool has stolen from Prague,
No.
which as soon as he said that, I was like, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Stolen?
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
there's
thought
so much. There's so much Crimson and Rush in this.
Well, I thought they were just considered a prog band, basically. Like, they're the only alternative rock prog band I could really think of.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that she brought that up because one band that we really should mention in the 90s prog thing is Primus. I mean, Primus were, besides
Right.
making albums that I thought were amazing, Les Claypool always gave nods to the old school. Always.
Yeah.
I had tons of guitar magazines where he was talking about Robert Fripp and he was talking about, Steve Howe and, Yes and Genesis and Rush and all that stuff. I mean, and they were the coolest band in the 90s, which shocked me, but
Nobody knew how to categorize them back then either. It's like they put them.
I heard Suck on This in 89 when it came out. I heard Tommy the Cat, the live version. And I thought, this is the craziest shit I've ever heard. No one is ever gonna like this. And then suddenly they were like headlining Lollapalooza, and I was wow. I mean, this is crazy, you know? Like,
Well, they were ahead of their time, that's for sure. They were on the alternative bandwagon before alternative was a
but
thing.
they were all like King Crimson Discipline. I mean, listen to the first song on King Crimson Discipline. It sounds like every Primus song, you know? Like they totally
Yeah.
stole that sound from Crimson, you know?
Well, it's like if they're not using like Wobbler, Wobbler.
What's the
They're a
Wob?
newer prog band from Norway, and they built a whole career on just like taking the sound off Yes, Close to the Edge, and all that, and
Oh
just
wow, right.
turning it into their own sound. So a lot of these bands are like, well, if they're not using it anymore, I guess it's a fair game.
Told this story like 673 times on the podcast. I'm going to tell it again. I saw Primus on the Pork Soda tour. They were headlining Lollapalooza, and I was crowd surfing, and they were playing "My Name Is Mud," and I swear I was crowd surfing in slow motion
There
because
may have been chemical
there
refreshments
were
involved.
quite a few, yes. But I just remember like, wow, look, the whole crowd slowed down just for me. That's
Love
yeah,
those moments.
yeah. And I'll go on YouTube and I'll watch that tour and people crowd surfing to "My Name Is Mud," and I'm like, yep, that's it. That was it. Yep, I remember. Yep. Just that bass, the drummer for them for this first couple of albums, he was so sick. Oh my God. Just
Yeah, those early albums are amazing.
amazing.
Frizzle Fry is probably one of my favorites from them.
Yeah, when Frizzle Fry came out, it kind of shocked me because I had only heard Suck on This, and I'm like, oh my God, they're serious. They think this is a real band or something. Yeah.
I haven't heard Suck on This actually.
Oh, it's great.
So
The
they
version of Tommy the Cat on there is
they
one of
put
the
out a live album before they put out an album.
right. Who does that? Right? Who does that? Yeah,
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 that's definitely not the norm.
yeah.
The one I remember the best is Sailing the Seas of Cheese.
Oh, it's great too. Yeah.
It's like how could they played the crap out of what was it, Billy the
Jerry's a race car driver.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jerry's a race car driver.
And then it was "My Name Is Mud," and then it was Winona's Big Brown Beaver.
Yeah.
Yep.
All those
They were
classic
another
lines.
they embraced MTV. They were just like, okay, we know how to handle this, you know, and it was huge, you know. So do I need to even do this? Do I need to even hold it up? I mean, you know, this is the copy that it shan't be played ever.
It's probably is it an original
Oh yeah.
copy? Wow, it's
How
probably worth
dare you question? Yes.
that's your retirement plan there.
Yeah. There's I don't know if you've seen it. There's a Rush documentary before he died, and Getty and Alex are at a restaurant, and the waitress recognizes Getty, but has no fucking idea who Alex is. So she's having Getty sign everything. And Getty goes, well, you know, he writes most of the songs. And she goes, uh-huh. Anyway, and this one's for my daughter. It's hilarious. And Alex is just like, okie doke. Yeah. It's great. Yeah.
Hey, rock stardom is has its ups and downs, right?
Ups and downs, yeah.
It's like,
Alex
Getty was the one singing, a lot of those people who grew up with the MTV generation and the videos, it's like the singer, is the charismatic one and gets your attention, and everybody else is just making noise behind them to glorify the singer. So, she was probably mesmerized by Getty's uncanny good looks. And
well, he's kind of like, I guess, besides he could be Burke Shelley from Budgie, but other than that, he doesn't look like anybody else, So.
He's definitely, he doesn't sound like anybody else either.
You ever read interviews with Burke Shelley? I mean, he's just like, Sabbath, fuck that shit. We were way better. And even now, he's just like, he never gave up the ghost. He never did. He was just like, yeah, Sabbath sucks. We're way better. Yeah. Paranoid is them ripping off Communication Breakdown. Fuck those guys. Yeah.
Wow.
They sold 80 million records and you sold like 12. And he doesn't care.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they were better than Sabbath, but they were certainly louder.
Right there with them.
They were
so weird. They were so weird. Like they'd be like storming along, and then they'd be like, "All right, hippy dippy time." Yeah.
Yeah, they were kind of caught between the metal and the hippie ears.
The hippie stuff, yeah. But I loved the interviews with Burke Shelley because he was it's still 1969 to him. he's never. Yeah, he's like, those guys will never amount to anything.
And I was really surprised, like when I was like trying to go through stuff, Spotify picks up on what you're listening to, so it suggested to me this, monsters of prog rock, and I said to Mark, I like this one. He's like, that isn't prog.
Well, no, it's. Do you think Can is prog? I always call them krautrock.
That's a point of contention in the prog world. Is krautrock prog? So
I've always looked at it as a completely different beast.
There's an overlap. There's some things that are both, and there's some things that I probably personally would not call prog.
Yeah,
I would call it experimental rock.
like Can and Noi and all that stuff. I mean, I love all that stuff, but I always just krautrock is so exclusive.
Proggers seem to latch onto it and include it in. They're like, the mother robin that stole the pigeon baby from the nest. It's like, no, we have to have this in our nest too,
Right, exactly.
But a lot of them are getting their day in the sun like 40 years later. I mean, Can is very revered these days. So, like, I heard 2 years ago, Gentle Giant actually had a top 40 album. Their 1972 album Octopus actually hit the top 40 in Britain.
I know.
40 years after it was released. So apparently the public is finally caught up to, is allowed to hear this stuff for one thing. We couldn't hear a lot of the stuff during the record label Stranglehold years because they controlled the radio, they controlled everything. So now you can kind of, there's all this peer-to-peer stuff. It's like,
right. Speaking of which, a band that I could not believe did not do well, in the aggregate, we're talking about prog rock, was King's X. If you had asked me in 1990 who's going to do better, King's X or Primus, I would have been like, Primus is a fucking joke, man. Come on, King's X is the real shit. Not at all true. Not at all true.
Well, they had a minor hit with Is This Love or something like that.
Yeah, but it's nothing like what everybody predicted. We just
I'm actually surprised too that they never went anywhere. They kind of peaked with that King's X album, and then Dogman maybe.
Right, and that came out when Dogman came out, and like the guys from Pearl Jam were behind it, and they remember they were in Woodstock '94, and they like brought the house down, and they still didn't get that big push.
Well, I personally think they're better than Pearl Jam, but
I was ready to quit my job and hop their equipment like in the 90s. I was a King's X man.
And I tell you, to this day, he was so excited. We were interviewing Rob Lamoth for his new band, Cross Country Driver. Guess who's in Cross Country Driver?
Doug Pinnick is is the bass player. So
wow. I have some friends out here who are like hardcore King's X fans, and they go to every show possible. If they're even remotely near here, they're on it.
Yeah, I saw them.
They pick up every new album, and I've lost track a long time ago. It looks like they had a new album just last year.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, it was just one of those. But see, the thing is that to be fair, you can't say that they didn't have their shot because they had tours with AC/DC, they had tours with Pearl Jam, tours with Motley Crue. The public just said, nah, we don't like it. I don't
think the public got it. It's like
right. And I
they thought they were some kind of religious band or something.
Yeah, I know. Well, there was that, and all the musicians loved them, but just the public just didn't. They just didn't latch on to them, and I was always able to reconcile that, okay, because they had such huge tours and they had every opportunity, but it just never happened.
Yeah, unfortunately, all the opportunities don't always result in the success that you think it should.
All right, man. Well, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good to talk to you.
All right, man. Talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Be safe.
Peace out. Okay.
Cheers.
This is the Snaggletooth Rock and Roll Podcast.